One of my first impressions was, I thought, oh my God, am I in the right place? They don't speak German here, at least not a German that I can understand, right? I think you know the feeling. Nothing really prepares you for the dialect. My first impression of the people, I mean, I lived together with lots and lots of Austrians because I was in a Studentenheim dorm called Hafenriegel. And it has a kind of a notorious reputation, I guess, amongst anyone in Graz is, oh my God, Hafenriegel. So I encountered Austrians every day, students, but my impression was that they were very unfriendly, very, very unfriendly. And that's one thing Americans are famous for is just that openness and that sort of friendliness without any, ulterior motives or like, what can this person do for me? And, we're just a lot more open and friendly and, hi, how you doing? How's it going? I quickly found out that when I did try to engage someone in conversation, auf Deutsch, and they, of course, always wanted to know, where do you come from? And it seemed that was question one. Question two was always, how long are you going to be here? And if I said, das weiß ich nicht genau, I'm not exactly sure, which was the honest answer, because the program was only for one semester. And I was very poor, didn't have enough money to even think about staying another year. I was on a scholarship. I probably should, go back. And so I really didn't know. I mean, I would need to get a job if I were to stay. So I started lying. And I started saying, when they say, how long are you going to stay? I didn't give them the truest answer, which was, I don't know, probably I'll have to go back in, right after Christmas or something. And so I changed it to, I started joking and for the rest of my life, and I already have my plot in St. Peter Friedhof, so don't worry, I'm one of you. This is the promised land, I want to stay forever. Jokingly, but then I found that things changed a little bit. Of course, they figured I was probably being sarcastic, but it seemed that they did not want to invest 1 minute in small talk, in anything that didn't have a payoff for the long term. And that was so different from my culture, where you can talk all night with someone, knowing damn well that you'll never see them again, but you enjoy the moment. You can enjoy the conversation. But like I was telling you earlier, I really wanted to stay away from Americans because my mission was to learn German. That was my whole reason for being here. I love playing Frisbee, as I said, so like my workout and my sports, only Americans can throw Frisbees properly. So I would always go to the park with Kevin or Dan, one of those guys, and we'd throw it around for a couple hours. And interestingly, we always attracted a crowd. Okay, we're quite good at throwing it and catching it and running it and just doing all sorts of tricks with it, and keeping two in the air at the same time and stuff like that. And I found it interesting that on those occasions, the people who would stop were not the young people, but the older people who would say, "Was ist denn das?" A fliegende Untertasse. And they would turn it around like we had just landed our spaceship behind the trees there, and they were like, whoa, and and very interested and very curious. But the older people, and it wasn't, I don't think, because the younger people didn't, knew what it was, like, cool, they had their own and no big deal. I just think, I don't know, they weren't as curious, and maybe there's just more old people in the park, and they're not afraid to ask people questions. I have to tell you, my solution for actually learning German and getting the contact with the language that I really desired and knew I needed to have if I were to get anywhere with the language. So it was a twofold strategy. First, read as much as humanly possible. And I would get 3 or 4 different newspapers, whatever I could find, and I would spend the rest of the week reading as many articles as I could and looking up all the words I didn't know. So I kept notebooks just full of words. And that was kind of like, you know, monastic and some people think very boring and not very communicative, and it really wasn't, but I was trying to figure out the structure of German. But I like going out. I like going to places where people are friendlier than usual. And one of the situations that Austrians get, where they get friendly, is when they get drunk and then they forget who they're talking to is a stranger, you know? Okay, and then I exploited that weakness in Austrians to actually have a conversation with a stranger. And I found that it was often older men who liked talking about the Second World War, and that was always a good topic when I would ask them, so was Austria liberated or not? And then we got into some interesting conversations, and I discovered certain viewpoints that after a while didn't surprise me, because Graz was, in certain parts of Graz, there was a little, let's say, a hotbed, you know, nest of these, let's say, people who had a more brown orientation. It's a beautiful country. There's fantastic mountains and clean lakes, and I cannot think of a more beautiful place than Austria, unless I think of my own country. But we have everything. We have deserts, we have mountains, you know, so it's an unfair comparison. But as countries go, Austria got really, really lucky in the draw, you know? Clean water, clean air, except for the street out there, I guess. And so it works, and it's a rich country, and you can have a very good life here. So I really like living here. You know, my father used to ask me that question every summer when I went back to visit, okay, for the last, and my son, I think, he was born 2 days before the Berlin Wall fell. I can't say I ever have any tears in my eyes going one way or the other across the Atlantic, you know? I think I have a good life because I've been able to maintain some of my, you know, identity that I grew up with. Well, I have no desire to go back to the States to live or work. I have a really good deal here.